So I went to the University of Washington recycling department, and they were kind enough to fill my car up with sticky, stinky, used plastic bottles, about that many. I think it was about 400 or 800 or something like that. And I'd put them in my driveway and photograph them over and over, stirring them each time with a rake in between. And it made this kind of bowling alley sound. And it took me 3 weeks of photographing every day to get the pictures, because I needed about 200 photographs that were all lit exactly the same way. You know, if one of them was a sunny day and the other one was a cloudy day, then when I put them together, it would look wrong. And so I had to have like a 10-hour period where I just stirred them and went click, and stirred them and went click. And it was in the spring in Seattle, and the weather's always changing there. You know, it gets sunny really fast, and then suddenly it's cloudy again. So every day I'd be out there and start my project, and then the weather would change. So it was every day for 3 weeks, and the neighbors kind of got used to seeing me out there raking my plastic bottle. And they go by and wave from their car like, there's Christopher raking his plastic bottles again. And finally I ended up with a few hundred photographs of these plastic bottles that I was able to begin stitching together into a gigantic image of 2 million plastic bottles, which is our plastic bottle consumption in the United States every 5 minutes. And this one you can see at the Museum of Art as well. One of the issues that I'm interested in with all of these pieces is the relationship between the individual and the collective. So with all of these, when you stand back at a distance, you can see this collective, and you can't make out any of the individuals. Then when you walk up really close, you can see that the collective is made up of lots and lots of individuals, and you can see all the individuals, but you can't see the collective anymore. And there's nowhere you can stand where you can see both all of the individuals and the collective. And I'm really interested in that, because I think the individual right now, at this time in history, there's a question that I'm wrestling with, that I know lots of other people are wrestling with, and that is, do I matter? Does my consumption matter in the world? Like, and here's the scenario that goes through my head. We all know that there's this terrible environmental problem with our mass consumption. But the idea that I have is, if everybody else would just get their act together, if collectively, if everyone else would solve this problem, then I wouldn't have to, because my consumption isn't the thing that's causing it. So I could keep on consuming at the same rate, and the world would be healed. And conversely, if no one else gets their act together, but I do, if I make sacrifices and stop flying on jets and ride my bike everywhere and stop, then the world won't be healed. And so either way, I didn't make a difference. And the Green Movement is all about a kind of finger-waggy version of that, which is, you too can save the world, and every vote counts, and every single individual counts. And there's a truth to that, because that's how we got where we're at, is hundreds of millions of people acting like they didn't matter. Well, it turns out that collectively we do matter. But each individual can make this argument to themselves that I don't matter. You know, why should I bother turning off the modem in my studio when I leave for a week, when there are whole cities in China that I don't even know the names of, that have their lights on, gigawatts of power being burned every second? It's like, my contribution doesn't matter. I think it's a fundamental question that the individual is facing right now in our times. It's like 1 over 6.7 billion is a really, really, really small number. How do we grapple with that? Like, how do we begin acting like we matter so that enough people collectively are acting like we matter to the point where we can heal this problem that we're causing? I don't know the answer, but I think it's a fascinating question to stand in front of and kind of feel. And it's so interesting to consider these mass phenomena that characterize our culture. The amount of oil that we burn, the amount of paper bags that we throw out, or the amount of plastic bags, or the amount of CO2 that's emitted into the environment. Every single one of these phenomena is invisible. There's nowhere you can go and see it, or hear it, or feel it, or experience it in any way with your senses, because they're spread out over hundreds of thousands of different locations, and in many cases they're actually invisible, like our emission of CO2 into the atmosphere. And so the only information we have coming to us to relate to these, to try to understand and relate to these phenomena, comes to us in the form of statistics. In American culture, maybe more than any culture in the world, I think American culture is distant from what we feel. You You know, like in America, everything's supposed to be fine all the time. Remember a really funny, kind of horrendous George Carlin routine where he talks about everything's fine. And I know as a man, it's like to feel fear is thought of as a bad thing. Or to be angry, you know, we're taught that if you're angry, then something's wrong with you and you need to fix it or get over it. You know, and if we feel grief, then that's wimpy. And we're sort of taught that we're supposed to be happy and everything's fine. And there's all these feelings that we label as negative feelings. You know, anger, rage, grief, fear, shame, anxiety. These are things that we're taught as Americans that we're not supposed to feel. And I think, and in addition to that, the information that we're receiving about these profoundly important phenomena in our culture all comes to us in this kind of abstract way that's really hard to feel anything about. And so I think American culture has kind of gotten far away from what we feel. And I think it might be fair to say that America is the most distant from what it feels of any culture in the world right now. Maybe Japan, maybe Germany, I don't know. But at least we're pretty far up there compared with other cultures that recognize that feeling anger, or feeling rage, or feeling grief, or feeling shame are simply human emotions that are a natural part of experiencing life, especially right now. I think anger, or rage, or grief, or fear are totally legitimate responses to what we see happening out in the world. And I think if we could connect with those things, if we could feel the grief that I know every single one of us has inside of us, if we could connect with the grief that we feel about the Gulf disaster that's happening, if we could really connect with that, or if we could really find our outrage, where is our outrage? We're just taking this. Where is our outrage? That to me is the gap between what Al Gore says, we know what to do, but we haven't found the political will to do it. And that's what I'm hoping to at least begin to foster with my work, is to take these issues out of the kind of abstraction of statistics and into a place where we can begin to relate to these issues and maybe feel something about them.